cognitive neuroscientist Heather Berlin.
Okay, so I'm going to argue in support of the motion from several different angles. But first I'm going to put my cards on the table and say I am not an atheist. I was raised Jewish, culturally more than religiously, but I still remain open to the possibility that there's some higher creative power in the universe, some benevolence that I can't quite comprehend that might deserve the name God. But remember, we're not here to debate whether God exists. We're here to debate whether God is becoming less needed as humanity evolves. And however we measure that need, whether it's a need for explanations, a need for comfort, or a feeling of belonging, or just to give us a higher sense of meaning or purpose, the answer is clear. The more we evolve, the less we need God. Now, I'm going to go through these various forms of need one by one, but first we should be clear what we mean by evolve. We're not talking about biological evolution or changes in gene frequency. We're talking about cultural evolution, or just the development of humanity. And scientific progress over the past several hundred years has completely transformed our knowledge of how the world works. And each major scientific breakthrough has had to overturn some religious dogma, right? So we've gone from believing in special creation to an understanding of how all living things descend from a single common ancestor by blind trial and error process, natural selection. We've gone from believing that God placed the earth in the center of creation to an understanding that we inhabit a tiny blue dot in a vast cosmos with 100 billion galaxies. We've gone from believing that diseases were curses caused by evil spirits and bad karma to an understanding of the deep mechanisms of disease at the cellular and molecular level. But we still live in a world where people reject life-saving medicine on religious grounds. Just the other day, there was a news story about a 2-year-old boy who died because his parents chose prayer over medical treatment. So the more our understanding evolves, the less we need God. Now, using God to explain natural phenomena is an argument known as God of the gaps. Throughout history, if there was a gap in our understanding, it was by default to say, God must explain it. But the more science illuminates our world and gives us a real understanding, the fewer gaps are left for God to inhabit. So when you hear from our opponents, be vigilant. They might tell you that the materialistic science can only explain so much, but we still need God beyond the limits of our understanding. That's a God of the gaps argument. Just because science can't explain something yet, it doesn't logically follow that God wins by default. And if God is just another name for scientific ignorance, that's hardly a God worth celebrating. Okay, so can we have a sense of purpose without God? And for me as a scientist, that's not hard to answer. The excitement of discovery, the story of how we humans have used reason and science to illuminate the universe around us while improving the quality of life for billions of people. That story is far more inspiring than any story told in a religious text or here on this stage. And that story has the benefit of evidence behind it. It has the benefit of perhaps being true, at least to the best of our knowledge. The fact is, people do find other sources of meaning and purpose when they lose their sense of religion or even God. Atheists, as a group, are not wallowing in depression or existential angst, and they're no more likely to behave immorally than believers are. And we scientists are enthusiastic, engaged, and optimistic about the real-world benefits our work is generating. For instance, the UN Sustainability Goals, none of which require a belief in God, include ending hunger and poverty, providing education and clean water for everyone, protecting the environment, reducing inequality. If that's not a sense of purpose, I don't know what is. And insofar as competing visions of God or what God are still a motive for violence in the world or for oppressing women, homosexuals, or non-believers, then belief in God is currently holding us back. Now, many people still believe in God and they need God in their lives, and that's okay. But that's not the motion you're being asked to vote on. The motion isn't the less of each of us needs God. The motion is the less we need God. We as a human species, all of us together. And I'm sympathetic to the comfort that belief in God can give people, and I wouldn't be arrogant to claim that everyone needs that comfort, especially when more and more people clearly do not. It's an empirical fact that we humans, on average, need God less than we used to for explanations, for community, and for comfort. And if you agree, or even if you think the modern world has diminished any one of the needs that God has once filled, then logically, the motion is correct. We need God less, and I urge you to vote for the motion.
Thank you, Heather Berlin. And now it's time to learn which side you believe has argued the best. We're going to ask you again to vote. Remember how we do this. It's the difference between the first and the second vote that determines our winners. Our motion is this: the more we evolve, the less we need God. In the first vote, 47% of you agreed with the motion, 31% of you were against the motion, 22% were undecided. Those are the first results. In the second result, the team arguing for the motion, the more we evolve, the less we need God. Their first vote was 47%. Their second vote was 67%. They picked up 20 percentage points. That's the number to beat. The team against the motion, their first vote was 31%. Their second vote was 26%. They lost 5 percentage points. That means the debate goes to the team arguing in favor of the motion. The more we evolve, the less we need God. Our congratulations to them. Thank you from me.